The May 17th, 2025 tornado in St. Louis, Missouri was an EF3 tornado, and it was devastating. It wasn't as powerful as other tornadoes. However, because this tornado basically walked through central St. Louis and north St. Louis and spent 9 miles on the ground, it did a incredible amount of damage, and the word incredible really doesn't start to describe it. Numerous news organizations have attempted to show the damage from the ground. We've attempted to use maps to assess the damage to see how big it was. Again, more drone footage, but it's really difficult to understand the full breadth of the damage with our eyes. The problem with our eyes is that we can only see things in front of us, whereas our brain can do more of an interpretation and find out a full scope of the damage. Again, the problem is that we can stand on top of a drone and we can look at the footage, but we're only looking at things that we see right in front of us, whereas having a satellite view image would allow us to look at the wider field of damage. So instead of looking at one building or maybe one neighborhood, we're looking at an entire metropolitan area, which is what we're looking at when we look at the tornado damage from the St. Louis tornado. So there's a company that does geospatial mapping. So they basically fly a plane with a big camera and they take pictures and they'll stitch the pictures together in what's commonly referred to as a gigapixel image. And then they'll use software online that allows us to look at these images and zoom in the same way we would do with Google Maps or Google Earth. So they did a pro bono project flying over the tornado damage in St. Louis. I believe they did it on Saturday Saturday or Sunday, because you can see tarps out, you can see trees down, you can't see a lot of trees that have been removed already. So this was taken relatively quickly after the tornado. We're going to start this in a logical way. Now, there is a socioeconomic element available because we'll start in one of the richest communities and we'll go to a community that is not as rich, a community that is not as rich. However, these are all people and they all live in the St. Louis metropolitan area and they've all been affected by it. But we need a logical place to start. So if we go back to one of these videos, you can see the storm track map. And the storm track map is good. However, it's a map. And what it does is it graphically takes us out of what we're looking at. We're not looking at the damage, but we're looking at clean imagery. So what Surdex did is they have, and we'll come into a hard hit area over here. So this is Fountain Park. The Post-Dispatch did an aerial video of Fort Fountain Park. You can see a lot of the trees are down. And then if we scrub this across, you can see the difference between trees being there and the trees being gone. This is what Surdex did. Unfortunately for me, there's no leaves in the trees. It was shot during the fall, and so it feels very different. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this May aerial footage to see it. So and if we zoom out here, we can get a bearing of where we're at. This is downtown St. Louis. The arch is down here. If we go west from downtown, we can follow Highway 40. Here, I'll bring up Google Maps. That might be easier. Zoom back here, and if we zoom in, we can see the same area. So we can see downtown St. Louis, we can see Highway 40, we can see the St. Louis Zoo, Clayton, and if we come to the north, let me see, if we come to the north, we can see Kings Highway. And then at the end, we can see O'Fallon Park. So you get a sense of where we're at. And then this is Fairgrounds Park, or Fairground Park right here. So we're going to zoom back, and then we're going to pop over to the damage assessment. So you can go farther to the west, and I believe I found damage as far west as Ladue, past Highway 170. But the majority of the damage really starts in the Hanley, so North Hanley, just south of the city of Clayton. And if we zoom in, I believe we can see kind of a couple outliers, which I'm not going to spend a lot of time on. And if we cruise over here, yeah, I'm not seeing a lot, but there's like one or two outlying houses over here to the left. And then if you come in, you can start to see tarps, and just a couple very small tarps right here. We can see a tarp on the top, a tarp over here. And then if we cruise along and give the imagery a second or two to revive itself, we can cruise down the way and we can start to see tree damage, which it's going to take us a little bit of time to see. I believe when I was driving Saturday morning, I could see a little bit of tree damage down Wyandotte. So this is Wyandotte right here. You can see, I believe that's a tarp. No. We're going to move toward more of the damaged area. So we're continuing along, and then we see Big Bend. Big Bend right here at Wyandotte was closed to traffic coming south because there was damage, I believe, along here in trees across there. They mentioned Concordia Seminary had some trees down. We won't go that far south because that's really kind of far outside of the damage area. Here's Fontbonne. If you come near Fontbonne College, or I guess former Fontbonne College, you can already see that there's tracks where people have come in and trees have been removed. And if you come farther along here, you can start to see trees down. So at trees down, you can start to see workers in here removing trees. And as you come in here closer, and as it continues, you can see trees down and more tarps. And then this is down right here, and you can see trees over homes, and they're starting to remove the trees. And if we continue on down, you can see it just basically drove right down down. There's a church down here. It looks like the tornado path came, and I'm not an expert at this, but it came across here, and you can see a lot of the homes right here have tree damage. So that's a tree over a home, another tree over here. The church over here damaged the top, and then kind of getting disoriented here. You can see that there's a roof taken off a little part of the roof here. You can see the trees down. This is the west side of Forest Park, the golf course. More damage to the trees here, and then you can see where there's been grass, and then there's been kind of shade underneath the trees. The grass underneath the trees looks a little different. So you can see more trees down here. This is coming through Forest Park. And then if we start to come up here, you can start to see that it's pretty wide at this point. There's a bunch of trees down. This is Lindell. So a bunch of trees down the north side of Lindell. And then just for the wide part of it, just so we can start to see the width of the storm, you can come in here and you can start to see tarps on top of homes. And if we come back, you can start to see trees down. So this would be Lindell just north of Forest Park. So Forest Park, Lindell, Forest Park Parkway. Coming this way, so we started in Clayton and we came across the park, and we can see that it's kind of widening out. There's some damage to roofs over here, and then if you come over on the wide side, you can also see that there's a little bit of damage to roof, but a lot of trees down. So there's some damage to roof right there. So at this point, what is that? About 2 city blocks wide. And then as we come this way, we can continue to see more trees down north of Lindell. And then we can start to see more damage. I believe these are rental properties, primarily rented by students. More trees down. If we come farther up here, we can see that it's having more of an impact on homes. And then I believe this is a hotel, and you can see damage to the roof, as well as damage pulled in and then kind of deposited here. So anyway, we have damage here, and then it starts, and then we've gone just this far. If we move up here, we can go to the area near Fountain Park. And you can see the tree damage to Fountain Park as well as the homes. And I believe there's this church, and I'm not sure if this is the church that had the fatalities. But if you zoom in here, you can get a general idea of when it was. It looks like this is a food and water distribution place for volunteers. So there's Fountain Park. And then we come up here and we can see more damage to homes. I believe this is a church, maybe? Church or a school. Looks like it's a school. But again, you can see damage over here, damage to the school. And then if we look to the far other side of it, we can see damage. Looks like damage about right here. So at that point, it's again about a block wide or so. But it's difficult to tell because of the software. We have to zoom in and out to see where we're at. We're not getting a high resolution all the way across. So if we move up here, we can follow the path of the tornado. And you can see the level of detail here and the damage to homes and the damage to trees. There are some buildings up here that are kind of in a state of, I wouldn't call it disrepair, but in a state of, I don't know. It's hard to explain. It's North St. Louis, and so some of the brick properties have been kind of let go, and they'll fall apart. But we can also determine whether that's the case or whether it's tornado damage by seeing the trees down as well. So this is Fairgrounds Park on the north side, and if we let it come up, we can see that we still have a lot of roof damage and a lot of roof damage and a lot of other damage and trees down near Fairground Park. And then if we come north from here and follow the damage track and look for tarps again and look for roof damage, you can see that there's damage to a church. I've driven by here before. As well as you can see many tarps in the area. And then if we zoom in, we can see a lot of roof damage. And then you can also see the people have already started to collect debris and put them on the side of the road. If we come up to, this is O'Fallon Park. We can see trees down on the front of O'Fallon Park. And if we zoom in, we can see trees down the island. And then we can see a little bit of debris, but this is also highlights from the sun and waves in the sun as well as birds. But we can see that there's trees down the island. And then if we come to the southeast side of the park, we can see that, again, we see trees down. We see debris around cars. We see debris in the street. And then we see damage to buildings. And more tarps. And if we come over here, excuse me, this is an old Catholic church, I believe. This is an old church property, and the church property was purchased by someone I met a couple of years ago. And you can see that the roof was torn off, and there's a basketball court in the room. And then if we come far this way, you can see that there's a little bit of debris. Nope. that's just kind of general wear on a parking lot, basketball court. And then that's kind of it. I mean, it's huge. So this is Highway 70 on the north side of St. Louis. So on this track, and then the tornado continued, but I believe it's really a St. Louis picture kind of thing. So we have started Hanley. Yeah, North Hanley, south of Clayton. And we've gone from North Hanley, south of Clayton, all the way up to O'Fallon Park in North St. Louis. Again, this is a really quick overview. It's hard to really even comprehend the amount of damage. I found this yesterday, and I spent I don't know how long just looking at it, trying to make sense of all the damage, and trying to make sense of how large of an area. But as you can see, we breezed over it in about 10 minutes or so, and it's a very generous path. So I'm sorry to come to you this way, but this is kind of where we're at with the tornado damage.